Hi everybody, this is Matthew Poes with Poes Acoustics, and in this video I'm going to do another little mini review of a product that I've put into the system. So what you see behind me, this is the corner of the room. It's all black, I know. I've got light in the room and everything, and you still probably can't tell what it is that I'm telling you. But this is a bass trap. It's a corner bass trap. Most of you probably are used to a primary type of bass trap, which is that you've got a wooden frame built into the corner, filled floor to ceiling with fiberglass insulation. Not super high density, because if it's too dense it becomes reflective when you have that much of it. And this has a 24-inch face. That's a pretty common one, so 24 to 36 inches. 17 inches would be from the face corner to the corner, which actually means that it's only about 12 inches right here, from here to the back. That's the thickness of it. That is your quarter wave point. That's 285 hertz, something like that. And that's really the peak efficiency of those. If you then add a very thin membrane, piece of really thin plastic like this, or metallized paper, something like that, you can drop it down maybe about an octave at most. So 150, 160 hertz is actually about what happens. So go take a look at some of the other corner bass traps that are made that way with the very thin membrane, and what you'll see is the peak absorption tends to be around 160 hertz, the upper end of the bass. It's not terrible, it's just that this is like, you can barely see this, but this is a 6-inch standard bass trap, and this thing will easily operate down there. So having something that doesn't operate much lower in the corner isn't ideal. The only way to get high efficiency in the bass absorption down lower is to use something that is a pressure zone type absorber rather than a velocity absorber. This is a velocity absorber. A thin membrane over this is still primarily a velocity absorber. It's just converting a little bit more of the pressure wave, which is why you gain efficiency down lower, but not a lot lower. This one is a full pressure absorber, if you will. This is a metal plate type absorber. So many of you who have a history in acoustics in this industry probably know one of the most famous companies that ever existed was RPG. RPG was known for Dr. Peter D'Antonio, and I believe it was Dr. Trevor Cox, were behind a lot of important discoveries in diffusion and diffusion theory, but they also licensed from Fraunhofer something they referred to as the Modex plate. I think that's who made it. And it was a steel plate bass absorber where you had, if you can imagine, a steel plate on a damped spring, which could just be fiberglass insulation, in a frame, and you put it on the wall. This area from the wall is going to be a very high pressure zone. You're at pressure maximum right up against the wall, and then as you move out to the quarter wavelength, you're at a velocity maximum. So anything that's going to be within a foot of this at low frequencies is easily going to be the pressure maximum for sound. So you're sticking this thing right in the pressure maximum, and it's going to be converting a lot of that pressure into heat energy much more efficiently than other absorbers. So you were able to have like a 4 to 6 inch thick bass trap on the wall that worked pretty well. But its performance wasn't that good. And you could actually get probably similar performance from a more traditional bass trap. It wasn't quite as good down really low, but that bass trap didn't really work up high at all, whereas more traditional velocity absorbers did. And so companies like GIK or GIK Acoustics were selling bass traps that were 6-7 inches thick, that with enough of them worked pretty well and had some other side benefits. And they had the thin membranes, which were good and provided a little bit of extra efficiency down low. This is Real Acoustix again, and Real Acoustix, Richard Lenz, who's the head of that company and head of their R&D, has spent a lot of time improving on the Modex plate concept and making a much better, higher performing one. Now there's a couple things to keep in mind. Very, very few acoustic treatment companies have their products tested in a lab that has the ability to accurately test down to 20 hertz. So Riverbank, or RAL, Riverbank Laboratory, is only really rated down to 100 hertz, and that's because the dimensions of their test chamber are too small to be accurate below 100 hertz. Now you can test below 100 hertz and you will get numbers, and there are correction factors you can put in, which is what they do, that they believe estimates more accurately what you're getting. The problem is it's just an estimate, and in fact, lab-to-lab comparisons against a reference like NWAA Labs, which is rated down to 20 hertz, have found that those estimates are not correct. They're pretty far off, in fact. So then the problem is companies that test their bass traps and then provide you with data below 100 hertz, it's probably not accurate, which makes it really hard to compare against somebody who has accurate ones. So this panel was actually tested at NWAA Labs, which is, as I said, rated down to 20 hertz, and it was found to be a really good, really efficient bass trap that it has significant absorption between, I mean, it has absorption at 20 hertz even, but it has significant absorption between 40, 50 hertz and like 150 hertz. The peak on this one, I believe, is around 65 hertz. And then what you see actually is a little bit more of a curtailing on the lower end side. So the absorption coefficients drops more quickly on the, if you're looking at the graph head on the left-hand side, which is the lower frequencies, which is normal. And then it's a little bit more spread out at the higher end, which is why you're going from 65 hertz down to like 40, 50 hertz. Really good absorption, but on the higher end, you're actually all the way out to 150 plus hertz of really good absorption. But it still has a lot more absorption down all the way to 20 hertz than you would typically get. So I'm only taking up, it's just 17 inches out on the wall on either side, and yet I'm getting a very significant and efficient amount of low frequency absorption. The other nice thing about these types of bass traps is that most rooms would benefit from a lot of low frequency damping. But if you really filled every corner with these, but they were the velocity style absorbers, and you added things like this style absorber in the middle here, on the front wall, which we commonly do on the ceiling, you'd overabsorb the room. And then you'd have the problem of what do you do? Now you've got plenty of low frequency damping, but you've got way too much mid-high damping. So you add scatter plates, for instance. Well, that helps a little bit, but it doesn't totally solve the problem. Including often to get the low frequency absorption you need from those, you'll still end up over damping the room. Because really what you want is it's below 150 to 200 hertz is where you really want to be piling on that damping. But these other types of traps, they're going to be very effective all the way up to 500, 600 hertz, and you're going to have way too much. And what happens when you look at the RT60 decay times is you see a response that isn't flat like you want, but actually shows a dip. So whereas you had kind of a bell shape probably to start with, you're now going to see a dip shape in the RT60, and that's really not ideal. So this actually has a curved front, so that the steel plate is curved. It's reflective at high frequencies, which means really this thing is acting, if anything, like a polycylindric diffuser. It's not acting like a typical velocity absorber type bass trap. And it's definitely not adding anything to the absorption at mid and high frequencies. So I can put these in every corner and not worry about what it's doing to the RT60 of the room. And corners are not really a place where you need a lot of mid-high absorption. It's bass absorption that you want there. So it's a very cool product. I will warn you, these are way more expensive than the typical bass traps you're probably used to seeing. There's a lot of engineering that goes into them. This thing is 8 feet tall. What I would probably recommend for most is if you don't need it to be just one piece, having this be 2 separate traps that sit on top of each other to make up the height of your corner is probably a better idea. This thing was way harder to manhandle than I thought it would be to get it up here, and my poor wife had to help me, but she did, and I appreciate it, and we did get it up here. But I highly recommend that you look at these. I think this is one of those things that's misunderstood, and a lot of people go to the wrong kind of product and end up putting bass traps in places that are not as effective as they could be. I'm not saying they're not effective. They're often very effective. They're just not as effective as they could be, and end up adding too much absorption where you don't want it. So, as I said, these types of absorbers really, I think, are a much better type of product for most people. I'm really a big fan of Richard's. I've gotten to know him a little bit through email exchanges and phone conversations. I think he's a really smart guy, understands acoustics better than most. His products are high quality. They're not cheap, but I think they're worth the money. And in my case, I mean, I didn't get these for free. I want to make very clear that yes, I get some stuff for free sometimes, but in this particular case, I paid for all these. And I felt that it was worth paying the extra money I needed to for these over other options, including could have gotten probably some free stuff, because I wanted the best possible engineered solutions, the best sound in this room I could get by using the right acoustic treatments. And I think these are better acoustic treatments than what you typically can get. So as I said, highly recommended. Actually, reach out to me if you want these. I can resell these to you. You can get them directly through him, but it would be the same price through me. And then of course you get my advice and help in making sure you're getting the right products. I'd love to see this company get more airtime and actually be used more and more in consumer residential home theaters. They're already a big company in the pro. Keith Yates actually uses their products on some of his. That was part of how I got turned on to it. So I was told by Ron Sorrow from NWA Labs that, I think they're friends, but that this was one of his favorite acoustics companies with some of the most effective products, and that I should reach out to them. So I did that, and I talked to him. And funny enough, then Richard told me, well, Ron is like one of the best engineers for testing. You should talk to him about different products. But anyway, Richard then had mentioned to me some of the places where his products are used. And so I reached out to Keith and others to ask them about their experience with these products. And nobody had anything bad to say. Everybody had very positive remarks about the product. And so I'm using them. I just got them in, just added them to the room. Can't tell you if it made a difference in sound. I haven't had a chance to measure yet. And just, the diffusers are sitting on the floor. This thing's just sort of propped into the corner. So, take a little bit to kind of figure out what they're doing. But I do plan to measure. I do have baseline RT60 measurements. And so hopefully I can get good measurements with this thing in there now and get a sense of what it's doing. There's a lot of low frequency velocity absorbers in the room at the moment that I'm going to pull out and then add back in. And then this thing, you can actually just pull it out of the corner and it won't do anything anymore if you just stick it in the middle of the room. And so kind of get a sense of what it's doing as well. As I said, I have baseline of when there was nothing in the room. So all of this will give me lots of comparison data. I can show it all to you. Hopefully you guys find that, interesting and helpful in your own journeys. Again, reach out if you want some help. This is what I do for a living and I'm happy to work with you on it. Subscribe to my channel for more of these videos and I hope you're enjoying this content. Thanks for watching.